Okay, so today I'm going to be going over compositional elements, and you should be using these in your compositions for surrealism. The three compositional elements are rule of thirds, rule of odds, and rule of lines, leading lines. If you go down to the first one, with rule of thirds, the idea about rule of thirds is that you basically make a tic-tac-toe board, and then wherever they cross is where you would put a focal point. So obviously the dog is the focal point down here. This is an example of the rule of thirds, but used in a portrait. A lot of people go through with portraits and they just center them in the middle. They tend to look terrible. In this one, if you can make that basic tic-tac-toe board, you can see that it's lining her face up along one of those points, which makes it just a better composition. Rule of odds, relatively self-explanatory. You use 1, 3, or 5 things. Once you get beyond 5, it's too many things. And if you were to just remove, for instance, this top penguin, the composition, it just wouldn't feel quite as good. Wouldn't look as good. Third one's leading lines. So in this case, you're simply having lines which lead your eye down to the important thing, which in this case is the lighthouse in the background. In this case, they have multiple leading lines, and you're going to see this one a lot. What I'm going to be having you guys do is identify, again, rule of thirds, leading lines, and rule of odds in different compositions, and then I'd like you to use these compositions in your own work. Alright, so just a quick refresher on characteristics of surrealism. Non sequitur, automatism, metamorphosis, change in scale or size, dislocation, again, something in the wrong location, okay, disassociation, and juxtaposition. And now I'm trying to get this to work. There we go. Okay, so this is what you're going to do today. On a sheet of paper, you can type this up. When you take a look at the next images, and I'm going to leave them up for like 20 seconds. You may have to go backwards. You're going to name the composition type or types. Sometimes they use all three of them. Okay? You're going to list all of the surrealist characteristics that you see in the work, and then you're going to turn in either the typed or the written notes on this. Okay, first work. Okay, again, what composition? And I would say that there are actually two compositional elements in this one. And then, what surrealist characteristics? Really try to focus in on one, because especially with Dolly, there are going to be a ton of them. Okay, this one, again, what compositional element? Again, I would argue that there are two. One of them is really being dominant, but there really are two. And what surrealist characteristic? Okay. Same thing. What compositional characteristic? And I know that he's centering the portrait. And yes, I know that it's the candle on his head that's the weird thing, but what characteristic of surrealism is that? What composition? There are two. Technically, there are all three actually in this one because there's only one person, so it would fall under the rule of odds. How are the other compositional elements being used? This one I hope should be relatively easy. In this one, what is the dominant compositional element? And no, I'm not going to count up all of the white spaces. And again, what's surrealist element? Love this piece. And do not put rule of odds, because I do get that there's one primary thing. And last one. By the way, I did put the numbers up in the corners, number 1 through 8. And I do kind of want to point out one more compositional element. There's something that I refer to as the rule of triangles, which basically says that between these objects, including the one in the center, there's this triangle that kind of moves your eye around. I call that the rule of triangles. It's something that I'll discuss in class. And I do want you to be able to discuss these, like explain to me why it's that compositional element. I mean, because you got a 33% chance of just guessing. All right, so that is your assignment for today, other than picking away on your surrealist project. See you tomorrow.